Over the years, car manufacturers have released some incredible vehicles that have become legendary for their reliability, performance, and design. However, not all cars have been success stories. Some have been absolute disasters, whether due to mechanical failures, bizarre designs, or poor safety standards. Today, we're counting down the 5 worst commercial cars ever made, breaking down what made them so bad. From dangerously flawed engineering to some of the ugliest designs in automotive history, these vehicles serve as cautionary tales in the industry. Buckle up, because you're about to see some of the most infamous flops in car history. Number 5. Chrysler PT Cruiser, 2000 to 2010. The Chrysler PT Cruiser debuted in 2000 with a retro-inspired design meant to evoke classic American cars of the 1930s and 1940s. While the styling was unique, the PT Cruiser quickly developed a reputation for being an underwhelming and cheaply built car. Available as a 5-door hatchback or a 2-door convertible, it had a front-engine, front-wheel drive layout. The base model featured a 2.4-liter inline-4 engine, producing 150 horsepower and 165 pound-feet of torque, which wasn't nearly enough to make up for the vehicle's weight. Chrysler later introduced turbocharged variants with 180 horsepower, and even a high-performance GT model with 230 horsepower, but these models still struggled with sluggish acceleration and unrefined handling. Beyond its lackluster performance, the PT Cruiser suffered from poor build quality and reliability issues. Many owners reported electrical problems, faulty power windows, and overheating issues. The interior was full of cheap plastic materials, and despite its relatively compact size, it felt heavy and underpowered. Additionally, the PT Cruiser had outdated safety features, and later models did poorly in crash tests compared to competitors. Sales were initially strong thanks to its quirky design, but enthusiasm quickly faded as consumers realized it was little more than a poorly executed gimmick. Chrysler finally pulled the plug in 2010, leaving behind one of the most polarizing cars in recent history. Number 4. Renault Le Car, 1976 to 1983. The Renault Le Car, known as the Renault 5 in Europe, was supposed to be a fun, fuel-efficient city car, but its attempt to conquer the US market turned into a disaster. This 3-door or 5-door hatchback was powered by a 1.4-liter inline-4 engine, making just 55 horsepower and 71 pound-feet of torque. Weighing around 1,800 pounds, it was incredibly slow, taking over 15 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour. It also came with a 4-speed manual transmission, though later models included a 3-speed automatic that made acceleration even worse. While its small size and fuel efficiency were beneficial during the 1970s oil crisis, American consumers found it too weak for highway driving and far too fragile. Aside from being underpowered, the Le Car was notorious for its poor reliability and low-quality construction. The thin metal body panels rusted quickly, and electrical issues plagued nearly every model. Suspension problems led to rough rides, and the car's narrow width made it feel unstable at high speeds. On top of all that, the Renault Le Car had terrible crash safety, making it one of the most dangerous vehicles of its time. By the early 1980s, sales had plummeted, and Renault quietly withdrew it from the US market. Today, the Le Car is remembered as one of the worst foreign imports ever to hit American roads. Number 3. Ford Pinto, 1971 to 1980. The Ford Pinto was supposed to be Ford's answer to the rising demand for affordable, fuel-efficient cars in the 1970s. This 2-door coupe, hatchback, and wagon featured a 1.6-liter inline-4 engine with just 75 horsepower in its base model. Ford later offered a 2.3-liter inline-4, 88 horsepower, and a 2.8-liter V6, 102 horsepower. But even the most powerful version struggled with performance. Weighing around 2,000 pounds, the Pinto was at least light, but its handling was poor, and braking distances were dangerously long. Though it was cheap to produce and sold well initially, a fatal design flaw turned the Pinto into one of the biggest scandals in automotive history. The rear-mounted fuel tank was the Pinto's biggest issue. In a rear-end collision, it was prone to rupture and ignite, causing deadly fires. Worse yet, Internal memos later revealed that Ford knew about this defect, but chose not to fix it to save production costs. This decision led to multiple lawsuits and fatalities, and Ford eventually recalled 1.5 million Pintos to install safety reinforcements. Despite this, the Pinto's reputation was irreparably damaged, and sales tanked. By 1980, Ford discontinued the model, but its legacy remains one of corporate greed and failed safety engineering. Number 2. Yugo GV, 1985 to 1992. The Yugo GV, short for Great Value, was a compact, budget-friendly hatchback imported from Yugoslavia, designed to be the cheapest car available in the US, with a 1.1-liter inline-4 engine making just 55 horsepower. The Yugo was agonizingly slow. A 4-speed manual transmission was standard, though a 5-speed manual was later introduced. Despite its tiny weight of 1,800 pounds, it took over 14 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour, making it one of the slowest cars of its time. The Yugo was priced at under $4,000, which appealed to budget-conscious buyers, but it quickly became clear that you got what you paid for, and that wasn't much. Reliability was a nightmare. The Yugo was prone to engine failures, timing belt snaps, electrical issues, and premature rust. Many owners reported the car breaking down within the first few months of ownership. Build quality was laughably bad, with poorly aligned body panels, doors that wouldn't close properly, and interiors that fell apart. On top of all this, the Yugo had horrific crash test ratings, offering virtually no protection in an accident. By the early 1990s, US sales had collapsed, and Yugo withdrew from the market, leaving behind one of the most infamously terrible cars ever sold. Number 1. Pontiac Aztek, 2001 to 2005. Topping our list as the worst commercial car ever made is the Pontiac Aztek, an SUV that was doomed from the start. Designed to be a bold, adventurous vehicle, the Aztek ended up being one of the ugliest cars in history. Its bizarre, angular design, awkward stance, and weird cladding made it universally hated. It came as a 5-door crossover SUV, featuring a 3.4-liter V6 engine producing 185 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque. While it had decent cargo space and an optional all-wheel drive system, the Aztek's underpowered engine and sluggish 4-speed automatic transmission made it slow and unrefined. Beyond aesthetics, the Aztek was plagued with poor build quality and reliability issues. The cheap interior materials made it feel low budget, and electrical problems were common. The suspension was stiff, leading to a rough ride, and despite its large size, the Aztek had poor safety ratings. It sold so poorly that it was discontinued after just 4 years, marking one of GM's biggest failures. Despite its awful reputation, the Aztek gained a cult following years later, partly due to its appearance in Breaking Bad, but that doesn't change the fact that it remains one of the worst designed cars ever released. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Until next time.